you want to do the intro?
This is Gareth A Davies at home late at night with Umar Ahmed of BoxNation TV, the burgeoning BoxNation TV that I'm delighted to be associated with, sometimes with the step in interview, sometimes on tour, and sometimes on TV. Take it away, Umar.
Well, actually, talking about the step in, our last one did really well. That interview with Tyson.
They've all done well. We've only done four.
Tyson, Frank, Eddie, and
Derek Chisora,
yeah,
or
correct.
did he step in on us?
I'm not going to say that about Derek. You can say that.
Good
Yeah, that was an
old
interesting
Derek. He's
conversation with
absolute
Tyson.
cult, isn't he? And I said cult.
I said that was an interesting conversation with Tyson the other day we had.
It really was. He used the word complacency when I said the optics in round nine, and also that he'd got too comfortable in there. I think he really said the right things last Wednesday for a guy who has dealt with the defeat, who believes he can win again, and who knows the adjustments he's going to make. And even since then, there's that comment, those comments which you probably were going to ask about from Andy Lee. There's going to be one voice in the corner, and it's going to be Sugar Hill Stewart. And people, I've got to say this: people run Sugar Hill Stewart down, but they forget where he did all his learning in the shadow of the great, late great Manny Stewart. He cured Vladimir Klitschko of his yips one step backwards. He was brilliant in his time with Lennox Lewis. Nassim Hamed, we loved him when he was with Nassim Hamed. I'd love to have seen him with people like Amir Khan and others as well. But he was amazing to be around. I once did his hand wrapping course in Park Lane on a Sunday with a few others. I got my certificate somewhere. Great guy. And Sugar Hill Stewart is from that mold. That's the shadow he's learned it from within. So I liked all the things that I saw about Tyson last week. The openness, the disclosure about what had happened with himself in Paris in May, losing a child. I say I like it. I mean, his openness is extraordinary at times. And I think that openness allows him, I mean, spiritually, as a person, to grieve, obviously, the loss of the child, but also to deal with the loss in the ring in his 36th fight. His first defeat. I think he's dealt with it very well.
Gareth, before we come on to the actual rematch itself, I wasn't really sure whether to go down this road, but you've mentioned it, and actually, when I came into the room to interview him, he was just finishing up his time with the Nationals, the written press, which I don't really normally get to hear, but I was coming in the room to interview him, and just as you guys were closing off, he actually did open up about what you just mentioned, the horrific.
I'd asked him the question, are you going to have any more children? Remember?
Yeah, I do remember that. Yeah.
And then he said, well, I've got to tell you, this happened in the week of the fight with Usyk, and Paris couldn't come out, and she didn't tell me about it, but I knew something was wrong. Um, and he also said, don't make this the excuse for why I lost. Do you remember?
I
He
do, and
actually
that's
made that pointedly because everyone wrote the story that night.
yeah, and that's what I wasn't sure about to discuss it, but it has come to the public's attention now, so it is out there. But again, I'm not going to talk about too much of it, but just want to quickly, explain how that came about, really, and what made you trigger that question to him, Gareth.
Um, because every time he's in a big fight, Paris seems to get pregnant. Every time he goes into camp, Paris seems to get pregnant, and they've lost a child before, you know. And obviously, when Athena was being born, there were worries as well. Their seventh child, if you recall,
Yeah,
there was they rushed to hospital around that. I think what it shows, I think if we're commenting on it, what a great family man he is, you know, because I think arguably when he went home, what he explained was, I felt awful for Paris that she couldn't have her husband there with her. And we've known each other. I've known her longer in my life than I haven't known her. I think he was 17 when he first met her, and she was 15, and they started courting, as they called it then. Um, and you know, they're very much in love. I mean, I remember when he won in Dusseldorf in 2015. I weirdly at the after party in the hotel, I stepped into the lift at one point, and it was Paris and Tyson in the lift, and they were going up to their room, and she was pregnant then, and they were driving back from Dusseldorf because she was too pregnant to be able to fly. And there's always that feeling. We know that obviously the Fury family are very close with brothers Hugh.
Picking this back up for the second time in about 2 minutes. Wi-Fi issues. My end, I'll make clear. Gareth, you were saying.
I just had a little bit of supper in the break there. Um, well, basically, I remember running into Tyson Fury in Paris in the lift in Dusseldorf after the after party. It wasn't that late when he beat Klitschko and won the world titles for the first time, three of the four belts. And they said they were going. I said, "Well, what are you going to do now? Are you going back out?" They said, "No, no, we're going up to our room to pray." And they would have been 27 and 25 then, 26 and 24. And I think they might have been having their first child then. And Paris was pregnant enough that they couldn't fly home the next day and they were going to drive home. And my point being that Paris has always been around in that milieu around his fights. As we've seen child 1 to 7 come through. And obviously, I think as Venezuela is what's she about 15 now, maybe? She
The oldest
15?
girl, yeah. Yeah.
So maybe it is they already had some of the kids then at that point. So they will have. And he's always a family man. He always is a family man. So I think it's almost like there's an alter ego that's the Gypsy King that he gets into character, and there's this guy at home who he just always describes himself as dropping the kids off at school, putting the bins out, going down to the supermarket. We've seen it on the Netflix series, Paris making sure they buy the pens for 450, not 950 in the local supermarket, in spite of him having 200 million in the bank, as I read somewhere today. I just think he's in a good place. And I think he'll give his all on December the 21st, win, lose, or draw. And I'm going to predict this. If he wins, I think he'll fight Anthony Joshua next, and then he'll fight Alexander Usyk. Because I think Joshua will sit out now and not fight Daniel Dubois. And I think the logical thing is that if Fury wins or even loses, if he wins, there's a trilogy there that's got to be made almost with Alexander Usyk. But it wouldn't surprise me, even if he won, to see him fight Anthony Joshua next.
What are you hearing about that Dubois-Joshua rematch? Because it looks like it's not happening next, Gareth.
I never believed it would happen, if I'm totally honest with you. Um, um, it didn't make sense for me to. It was the manner of the defeat rather than the defeat. To go back into that with the mental scars that you have. Look, Fury and Usyk. Fury got knocked around in the ninth round and got a standing count, didn't he? He didn't have the shit beaten out of him. It was a really close fight. It was a split decision. I had Usyk winning 1-1-4, 1-1-3. It was a close encounter. Fury was dominant for 7 rounds. Anthony Joshua's contest with Daniel Dubois was him showing amazing resolve to stay in the fight after being dropped in the opening round and then hunted down. He had 15 seconds of retort in that 5th round before he was knocked down and out, still trying to get to his feet, still had the fight in him. That, if the 9th round optically didn't look good for Fury against Usyk, and now they're obviously having an immediate rematch, it really didn't look good for Anthony Joshua to go straight back into the Dubois fight. I don't think it made sense. Obviously, Eddie Hearn and Anthony Joshua said so at the time, and I think now they've sat back and thought about it for a while. It doesn't really make sense. Wait to see what happens with Fury and Usyk next, and regather yourself. So that's the sense that I'm getting. Daniel Dubois needs a big fight. I think the logical fight for him, and I don't know if this is happening, but the logical fight for Daniel Dubois right now is Joseph Parker. And Joseph Parker and Daniel Dubois are both resurgent fighters in the heavyweight division, arguably the two most resurgent fighters over the last year and a half. It's a fantastic fight. Parker deserves a tilt at one of the belts. Dubois got the IBF. I think logically it makes sense. And I'll be honest with you, no one has told me that fight is happening, but that fight makes sense to me.
Is there a bigger fight for Daniel Dubois, obviously excluding the rematch between Fury and Usyk, and if we take Joshua out the equation, is there a bigger fight for Daniel Dubois than Joseph Parker, or not really?
Yeah, Anthony Joshua. Oh,
No,
you've
I
taken
said,
him out of the equation.
yeah.
Uh, Another Usyk fight.
No, no. Taking Fury and Usyk out the
Oh,
equation.
and Joshua.
Yeah,
All
is, I'm
three.
I'm trying to think, is there a bigger fight for Daniel Dubois bar Joseph Parker? But probably not. I don't know.
Not really. I mean, I'd love to see him and Fabio Wardley fight, but
That's not gonna
uh,
happen. Or
it's not going to happen at the
Him and
moment.
Zhang, maybe.
I think the stylistic matchup of Daniel Dubois and Joseph Parker and where they now sit in the heavyweight division, the narrative of resurgence and rejuvenation that they both have in their careers, I think that is the fight. They are both the two most prominent rising heavyweights at the moment. Parker's, as I say, he's been resurgent. 5 wins in 15 months, isn't it? Obviously, there's a Jack Massey win in there as well at heavyweight, and Massey isn't a heavyweight, but you look at what the two men have achieved. Look at what Daniel Dubois has done since he lost to Alexander Usyk, and he still put up a good performance that night. I think that's a great fight. Bacoli and Dubois is a brilliant fight, but then it looks like Bacoli and
Kabayel, purse bid.
Kabayel. That's an amazing fight, which has been ordered, I think, and the winner is the mandatory for that belt held by Daniel Dubois, the IBF. That's a great matchup. And then that leaves who else is there? Deontay Wilder to step in against Francis Ngannou, who's just won against Renan Ferrer in the Night of Champions back in MMA and looks brilliant, by the way. You probably didn't watch it, but I think
No.
a lot of boxing fans did, believe it or not, because I think there's an interesting. Imagine if Ngannou fights Wilder. He'll have fought Wilder, Fury, and Joshua, and they all haven't fought each other yet. What a weird sport we inhabit.
If you're Team Dubois and
Yeah.
that Joshua rematch doesn't happen,
Even though Don Charles would never let me.
it's a whole different conversation there.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, Considering the conversation we've just had about what are the actual big fights for Daniel Dubois, are you a bit gutted actually that you can't get that rematch with Joshua next?
No, no,
No,
no. Because if he gets knocked out irrevocably for a second time, irretrievably perhaps for a second time, I don't think there's a way back. I think
no, Gareth. I said if you're
sorry.
Team Dubois, are you a bit gutted that you're not getting that Joshua rematch, considering there's actually not many monumental fights out there from apart from Fury, Usyk, and Joshua, and we're saying they're all occupied next.
Well, Joshua isn't, but Daniel Dubois will fight anyone right now. He's flying high. He's capable of knocking out anyone in the top 10, capable of doing it. If he goes in and fights like that against any of them in the top 10, he's capable of winning. Frank Warren knows that. Daniel Dubois knows that. Don Charles knows that. This Daniel Dubois is very dangerous. Um, he's certainly very dangerous for 6, 7 rounds. Very dangerous. Arguably the most dangerous heavyweight out there right now, over 6 or 7 rounds, because he's a heat-seeking missile. You know, Daniel Dynamite Dubois is the heat-seeking missile in the heavyweight division. Imagine him colliding with Fabio Wardley.
I think that's one for the future, though. No,
Imagine him colliding with Martin Bacoli.
yeah,
But Kabayel is smart, so that's a good fight.
those
Who
Parker,
else? Who?
Parker
Fabio
smart.
Wardley. Fabio Wardley next against Usyk, Fury, Dubois, Parker. Zhang, five. Oh, Zhang. Hasn't got an opponent, has he?
No, but I don't know if that Zhang Parker rematch is going to happen next.
Could do. Could do. Zhang and Wardley,
That's a good fight.
isn't it?
That is two very heavy-handed individuals.
I think Fabio would fancy taking anyone. So Usyk-Fury, Dubois, Parker, Zhang,
Bako,
Caballero,
Caballero.
Bacoli, Wardley. That's eight. Who are the other two then? Who are
Do
the?
you put Derek in the top 10 because he beat Joe Joyce?
No, not at the
No.
moment. Sorry, Derek, but no.
Okay.
Um,
Who'd you
um,
put in though? Because Jared Anderson's come out that list.
Jalalov.
Jalilov, I suppose. Yeah.
He'll be in the mix soon. Um, Arslanbek Makhmudov has probably just slid outside a
He's had a
little.
couple of losses, hasn't he?
Have we
So
forgotten someone here?
I think Derek deserves to be in the top 10.
Maybe. But he doesn't beat Wardley.
But you've already put Wardley in the top 10, haven't you?
Wardley's in the top.
I'm
It's a
just saying,
really
as a
interesting.
ninth or a tenth, I think Derek actually should be there. He beat Joe Joyce, so
Yeah, there's an argument. But would he beat Frank Sanchez? Maybe not.
no. But yeah, obviously Sanchez coming
Would
off.
Derek beat Arslanbek Makhmudov? Maybe not. So Makhmudov and Sanchez are hovering around there. Imagine Makhmudov and
Oh, you forgot
Wardley
Gerald Miller actually.
and Jarrell Miller. Did he deserve? He's done all right. He's done all right. I thought he beat Andy Ruiz, by the way,
Yeah, that's why I mentioned him actually. You
in
have
Los Angeles. But the great thing is that we've got a formation of that top 10. You know, what happens to Jared Anderson? He needs to
hang
rebuild.
on. Did you put Joshua in the top 10? Did you mention Joshua?
And well, we might have forgotten Joshua.
Yeah,
He's about six at the moment, isn't he? Does Parker beat Joshua right now?
I think given on current form, you'd have to make Parker a favourite in that fight. I think so.
I'm not sure about that.
No, you think Joshua's a favourite against Parker?
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, if you go on the optics of the last fight, obviously Anthony's struggling, but he didn't have a good night, had a real off night. And when he's on form, he's a destroyer. Um,
But would you not
I
say
just think,
Parker's number 4 in the world right now?
yeah, Parker or Zhang.
Well, he beat Zhang, so you'd have to put.
He did, but I know he beat Zhang, but I saw that a lot closer than other people saw, I'm afraid.
Okay.
Um, yeah, a lot closer. I know, but I was shouted down a little bit about how I saw that fight. Um, I thought it was close to a draw, very, very close to a draw. Zhang dominated that first half of the fight. He got two knockdowns, well, remember, didn't he? But he
Yeah,
just didn't throw anything in the last three rounds. That was the problem. It's a bit like Catterall and Prograis. I had Prograis 5 rounds up after seven.
yeah, let's talk about that. Let's move on from the heavyweight division. So,
But
Regis,
how fun to talk about the heavyweights right now. And this is the anniversary, by the way, when this goes out. It's the anniversary of Battle of the Baddest between Fury and Ngannou, you know?
yeah, 28th of October. Well, it's going to go up on the 29th, but correct, yeah.
But a lot of people, it's a year. Look what's happened to boxing in a year, Umar. You know, BoxNation TV didn't exist, did it?
No,
Your channel did. And now you've got 90,000 subscribers. You've done an extraordinary job on it. You know, I'm great to be an associate. It's great for me to be an associate of it. Look what's happened in the last year. I know not everyone is behind what's happened, and people have debated about atmosphere in Saudi Arabia and the anthem being played at Wembley, and there have been people that have denigrated it. Carl Froch has become a kind of, an advocate of I know how the whole world should look at boxing. You know, other people that I work with denigrate things, but look at the great things that are happening in the sport. You know, we know because we've been to all these events. We know what it's like in these atmospheres. It's extraordinary. Boxers are getting paid really well. There's an opportunity for people to do things. We can fantasize about the fights we want. Liam Davis was on TalkSport with me on Saturday night saying, I want Noya Nui. I want him if I beat um, um, Masood at the weekend, Shabazz Masood. If I beat him, who's undefeated as well, great fight this. Liam says, I want him at featherweight. Nick Ball's saying, I want to fight Noya Nui at featherweight. We got a picture this week of Turkey Al Sheikh with Noya Nui. It's all happening. Fantasize about the fights, talk about them. They're going to happen, and it's brilliant.
Certainly is. Um, Regis Prograis is saying he's put out a statement saying that he's not going to retire from the sport. You happy?
Oh, I
Yeah.
missed that.
Yeah. You happy to see that?
Thought he was retiring and doing a bit of bare knuckle. No,
No, no, no. He said he's not retiring from boxing.
he's looked at it again. I had him when Jack Catterall touched down with his gloves. He was off balance, and it was counted as a knockdown. I think in the seventh round of their fight that I rewatched after presenting on Talk Sports on Saturday night. I was sitting here rewatching it, thinking, "Oh my god, I got Prograis 5 points up after seven," but Jack clawed it back. He was brilliant in those last 5 rounds. A 10-7 with the two knockdowns, dominated all the other rounds. I had him winning 114, 112. I had a 10-10 early on, maybe the first round. He was brilliant. He's so elite with his patience and his movement and his awkwardness and his punch selection. And I thought he was brilliant. It was a really interesting battle between two southpaws. People were complaining it was a boring first 6 rounds, but I thought it was fascinating. The dance was extraordinary. Jack Catterall is the guy that should have been king, but never has been. And I think he'll get his opportunity now.
I'm going to throw a bit of a curveball question at you. So at the moment,
Mm.
out of British current active fighters, pound for pound, right? Who's the best one? I'm going to give you some names, all right?
Cool.
Tyson Fury, Nick Ball, Daniel Dubois, or Jack Catterall.
Nick Ball won. It's very hard to do pound for pound with heavyweights. Yeah.
I know, but I'd say Dubois and Fury are two of the best we've got across all.
Yeah. Are we forgetting someone there as well? Maybe Hamza Shiraz.
Hamza was on my mind, but he's not fought for a world title yet, so but he's gonna next, anyways. But out of those four, who would you say is the number one? You said Nick Ball's number one.
Pound for pound right now, Nick Ball is brilliant. Um, I think we're forgetting someone.
Are we?
Catterall. God, that's a really difficult debate.
Because I saw someone on the weekend afterwards say Catterall's the best fighter in Britain across all weights.
Well, in reality, he's undefeated and he should have been undisputed. I had him beating Josh Taylor that night by a couple of rounds. I thought he was very, very good. It was a close fight. It was a close, scrappy fight. I had Jack Catterall winning it. Um, he'd have had a slightly different career if he'd won that night as well, because he probably would have had a rematch with Josh. Obviously, he beat him in the second fight anyway. But Josh had been beaten by Tio. Then I was there that night, and Tio was at the best I've ever seen him, frankly. Even better than the Lomachenko fight, Vasyl Lomachenko fight. I can't say I'm not going to answer your question because that's wrong of me. But if Nick Ball was a heavyweight, he'd beat them all. Mind you, would Daniel Dubois knock him out?
This is a weird thing to think about.
Well, I mean, I know, but it's mythical, isn't it? Pound for pound.
I don't think we are missing anyone though. I think those four guys are the strongest at the moment in Britain. Yeah, I don't think we're missing anyone obvious.
Um, just going through the weights. Sonny Edwards.
Yeah, former world champion. Yeah, you could put him in the conversation, and so especially on talent and skill for sure.
Yeah,
Sonny.
yeah. Um,
But he's in a tough fight next against Galal, if I.
I know I'm revising my opinion on that. I went for Galal very early on, but I'm just starting to think I might have picked too early and with too much haste, more haste
But look,
than too
if
much.
you're saying Nick Ball and that's your gut answer, then that's your answer, number one. It's fair enough. He's been on a
But if
great run.
Fury beats Usyk in the second fight, it'll probably be Fury. Um, I'm just trying to go through the weight divisions.
Yeah, believe me, we've not missed anyone.
No, we're in a very interesting period, actually. Very interesting period with Adam Azim, Hamza Shiraz, Dalton Smith, Nick Ball still on the rise.
Liam Davis, if he wins this weekend, he's craving a world title shot.
Liam Davis, Nick Ball.
Yeah,
I mean, why not?
yeah.
I mean, I doubt whether Frank's going to do it. Obviously, they're both
That's what I mean.
Queensbury,
Yeah.
but really, I think they're building towards. I mean, the things that I am hearing is a 5v5 in February next year, big 5v5, which initially, obviously, was going to be headlined with Fury and with Joshua and Dubois, but it probably will be Dubois headlining. But does that mean Eddie needs to sign a heavyweight?
But yeah,
Does
he
he
will
need?
do, won't he?
Yeah, but Parker for me is the opponent. He
Well, he's
needs a fight.
Frank, so that doesn't work.
Well, Frank's gonna. Well, it's going to be a Queensbury win, whatever happens, isn't it? I'm also. I don't. I want to discount those rumors today about Saul Canelo Alvarez and
Eubank.
Chris Eubank because it was a very narrow announcement stroke chat because I'm hearing that I'm waiting to do an interview with Conor Benn around the resolution of his situation, which is imminent. One is hearing. So I'm waiting to hear a result. We don't know which way. I don't even think they know which way it's going to go with UCAD and the Boxing Board of Control in terms of how the resolution is going to play out. I think many of us feel that he's almost served his ban and he's been penalised in many ways. Had a great interview out with him in Riyadh. I'd like to see him back. Like to see him back in the ring. And I'm still tempted by the Ben Eubank 3 fight. Um, having just watched Four Kings as well with Ben Eubank, Bruno, and Lewis. Have you watched it yet?
No, I haven't. No.
For anyone that hasn't seen it, it's a brilliant series. I think it's either on Amazon or Netflix. I can't remember right now, but it's a really compelling series about those four guys because, of course, they fought a week apart.
Mm.
Bruno Lewis, Ben, and Eubank back in 1993. I think you weren't even born. I don't think. Were you born?
No, I wasn't. No.
No. It was an amazing couple of weeks, and they were four men of color who were and are still adored by the British public. Um, and they are legendary figures in our sport. And I love them more as time goes on. And I think we all do. It's a really good series. And I would like to see the Suns fight.
Okay. Anything else before we close off? Anything
I
major?
don't know. We've almost put the world to right, haven't we? Um, what else is there? I think we've covered most of it. Maybe poor old Campbell Hatton. There's a lot of pressure on him. A lot of
Mm.
pressure on him to succeed, and I'm mystified. I think Eddie Hearn was brutally honest about him, and he wasn't good enough on Saturday night against Flint. And how they handle his career now, he's already 16 fights in. How they handle his career is very important because that name Hatton brings a lot of pressure with it, as do the names Ben and Eubank, of course. But um, you just want to see the kid do well.
I've just actually been through Benson's post, and there's nothing else that's major that's happened.
Done it all, baby. Done it all.
Gee, thank you, mate. Speak to you soon.
Rock and roll.
Where's the stop? Where's the stop button?
Night, Georgia.